The things that we do consistently define who we are, period, done. It's not who we want to be. It's not who we say we are. It's not who we think we are. It's the decisions we make on a consistent basis, day in and day out, define who we are and how the world sees us.
You always hear the truth will set you free. It's honestly probably the most accurate statement ever created in the history of the world. I went from 5 panic attacks a day and hiding every secret you can possibly imagine to freedom.
To me, in order to access true vitality, you have to free your mind. And the only way to free your mind is to die to the limitations of your identity that were born in your childhood through whatever circumstances you had to go through. So I love death. We're always dying.
Hi, and welcome to Common Denominator. I'm Moshe Popek, and today we look back at our favorite mindset episodes to give you the clarity that we need going into 2025. But first, a quick ask. We've been filming almost 200 episodes, and we've gotten some amazing guests, but we really want to up the ante. And the way we do that is by getting likes and subscribes by listeners like you. So it really, really means a lot. If wherever you listen to this podcast, if you're enjoying it, please hit the like and subscribe button. Thank you. And now get ready for a masterclass in mindset. Andy Bustamante is a former covert CIA intelligence officer, decorated wartime military veteran, and U.S. Air Force Academy graduate. He's now a prolific Fortune 10 corporate advisor, where he specializes in human and technical operations. And as the founder of Everyday Spy, he provides spy tips, tactics, and insights to give you an unfair advantage in everyday life. Here's one of those essential tips.
So I was thinking about this, Andy. What's a practical tip if you're just meeting somebody for the first time to really know more about them? Body language.
So it's great. So body language is something that's super helpful, but also it can be misleading. So the first thing to understand is that there's two basic rudimentary forms of body language. There's open language and closed language. So open language is what you are right now, Moshe. Your arms are open, you're leaning back, but your chest is exposed, your face is exposed, you've got a smile on your face, like very open body language. Open usually means receptive or curious. But then closed body language, that's when you see people with their arms crossed or their hands closed together or their legs crossed, right? Or somebody who's kind of got a furrowed eyebrow or a frown. That's closed body language. That means somebody is inherently suspicious or trying to keep themselves distant. If you just understand those two basic rudimentary forms of body language, when you see open language, you can lean in with more aggressive or more penetrating questions. When you see closed language, you want to ask fewer questions and instead talk more about yourself. Share more about your thoughts, your feelings, your views of the world. Because what you need to do is crack through their closed body language.
For the past 27 years, Jim Curtis's mission has been to change the health and wellness of the world. First, as an executive at WebMD, Everyday Health, and the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, and now as a coach, spiritual guide, and therapist. In this clip, he shares incredible advice on how to become more magnetic, present, and optimistic. The concept of magnetism, I think that's a brilliant nuance. And first of all, what does that mean in general? What does it mean to you?
Well, there's two things, right? So most people perceptionally are living kind of in this reality that thinks that like the things that I do and you do create this reality, right? So when I come to people like that and I say, how to become more magnetic, and you start to give pointers on how to become more magnetic, people start to think, okay, how do I attract more people into my life by doing things, some social psychology or an action that I can take? But it's almost like giving vegetables mixed into a cake or some other thing, some tricky way to get someone to eat vegetables, because you truly become magnetic when you cultivate presence in this reality that, or this realization that we are far greater than this human form. We have this spiritual life, this spiritual presence, this energy that's all around us that we can't see. And we start to rise above this everyday crazy monkey mind thoughts. We just simply become more present. And then everybody's attracted in some way because they find you as having something they don't.
Victoria Vesce is a model and influencer, and perhaps most importantly, a brain tumor survivor. She shared her incredible story of courage and how that battle changed her mindset forever. Here, she tells us why it's so important to travel the world, especially if you do it alone.
When you travel, I know you like to travel solo, right?
Yeah.
Which is a thing. I think that also makes for someone that's very strong in who they are. What's the reasoning for traveling solo?
Well, after I got diagnosed with my brain tumor, I went through all of that. It just gave me a new perspective on life. Like, the only thing I could think of, like, laying in a hospital bed, not being able to move, was like, I haven't seen the world. So that was like step one of my, like, I want to travel process. And then I just never really, after that I went to law school, so I never really acted upon it. And then when my mom passed away, just suddenly, actually from COVID, it was like the last wave of it. My mom was my best friend, and we had planned to do so much together, and I'm like, you know what, I'm not waiting any longer. Like, enough with the waiting, I'm going to go travel. It's kind of almost like my eat, pray, love kind of deal, was just healing my heart, because I, like, lost my soulmate, which was my mom. And then obviously I'm still been somewhat healing from the brain tumor process. I mean, it's a lingering thing, especially since I'm deaf in my right ear. But just traveling has just given me this whole new perspective on life. You see how beautiful the earth is created. I was in Ha Long Bay in Vietnam, just looking at all these, like, crazy rock formations. And then I'm in Jamaica at the waterfalls. I'm in St. Lucia just swimming in the water. And you just realize, like, the beauty of life, because I've seen so much, like, trauma and tragedy happen in just my life alone. And then you see it in the world around you when you turn on the news. It's just nice to get a fresh perspective on the world. And so that has really brought joy and peace to my life, has been traveling. And I'll go with friends sometimes, but I really have been enjoying going solo, because it's just kind of like really reaching deep inside of me and figuring out who I am as a person.
Kehinde Thomas started from humble beginnings, growing up in Nigeria, where he faced poverty and hunger. He came to America as an exchange student, seized his opportunity, and never looked back. He's now a thriving entrepreneur living the American dream, and he encourages people to take risks and be bold in every aspect of life. Here's more about where he came from and why he's so grateful for the life he's built.
So all of us, the way we eat, it's very traditional. Back in the days, like agrarian culture, like farming, etc. So food will come. It will be right in the middle. All of us will sit around, and we're eating from the same plate. So are you ready for this? If you don't eat fast enough, you starve. Oh. So when we eat, we have to eat like... So actually, one of my brothers, we had a name for him, and we call him Cooler. You know what that means? The food is so hot, but he's able to eat so fast. It's like, how do you eat? So we say, he's got a cooler in his mouth, so we call him Cooler, okay? So, when we were kids, like, they will protect us, like me and my twin brother, because we're younger, and then my other brother, Martin, so they'll protect us. So, and give us a play. But as we get older, so now you're like in your 5 or 6 year old, you eat, with everybody. So today when I go to a restaurant, it's kind of really strange. Even though I have the money and everything today, I'm the first one to finish my food. If we're all eating together right now, you will still barely starting your food. I'm done. You're like, whoa, you're really hungry? No, it was just that habit as a kid. So what I would say is this: we take a lot of things for granted. We really do. We take a lot of things for granted. But if you had an experience that I had growing up, you have a tremendous appreciation, for life. Tremendous appreciation for abundance. Tremendous appreciation that you have the ability to fail or succeed, the freedom that we treasure. because of the fact that you were not exposed to those things, growing up. So I say to people, it's a different world. It really is. And I'm so grateful. And that's why every post, everything I talk about how America, is the best country in the world. What it's done for a guy like me as an immigrant, to be able to come to a place like this, and end up doing the things that we did. I have tremendous appreciation. Tremendous. Nothing's perfect, but my appreciation is enormous.
Michael Bernoff is the president and founder of the Human Communications Institute, a leading force in the personal and professional development industry. He works with individuals and executives who desire to transform their corporate culture. Here, he breaks down the many benefits of positive self-talk.
When I talk about language, we've got to recognize you've got to take full responsibility for how your language actually impacts your actions and things you do. So I'll give you a prime example. Like, I see people go, man, I can't stop eating this thing. I love it. Well, think about the word you just used. You just said, I love Netflix. I love watching the show. I love Twinkies. I love some food. The second you said I loved it, you used the most powerful word in the English language that I know of, love, connection, which produces oxytocin in the body, and you attach it to a show on TV. Now, Netflix is thrilled you did it. That's part of their marketing plan. They want you to love it. So is Twinkies, and so is Starbucks. They want you to love it. Okay, what you do. So when we use those words, it's hard to shift. So imagine you said to yourself, Starbucks is yummy versus I love it. The second you love it, you take that word that you should reserve for your 10 kids, your wife, your family, what happens is instantaneously it's being used in the right place. So I truly feel that the majority of us are using language in a very, very inappropriate way. And some of us realize if we could actually recognize it's no different than putting a prompt in ChatGPT, we're getting back what we're putting out.
Since positive reinforcement is so critical, let's spend a bit more time tackling it. Jon Gordon is a multiple best-selling author and speaker on the topics of leadership, culture, sales, and teamwork. His principles have been implemented by Fortune 500 companies, pro and college sports teams, school districts, hospitals, and nonprofits. He shares how you can set yourself up for greatness just by the way you treat yourself.
And so the thoughts we think and the words we say become the reality and the life that we live. Like, that's how important thoughts are. We are more thought beings than physical beings because we're energy. And so our thoughts of who we are, of what we believe, our perspective, and how we see the world determines the world that we see. And so I know mindset is everything. And there's one piece of advice I think is great to start with. It's from Dr. James Gills. He was the only person on the planet to complete 6 double Ironman triathlons. That's a double Ironman, which means you do an Ironman, and then a day later, you do another one. And the last time he did it, he was 59 years old. And he was asked how he did it. And he said, I've learned to talk to myself instead of listen to myself. He said, if I listen, I hear all the fear, the negativity, the doubt, all the reasons why I can't finish this race. But if I talk to myself, I could feed myself with the words and the encouragement that I need to keep on moving forward. And I've learned over the years, since that advice, since the feeling blessed instead of stressed, the success journal, and all of the practices that I actually brought into my own life. And now I teach to others, world-class athletes, the most successful sports teams, the highest level CEOs. I get to work with all these incredible leaders and businesses and sports teams and organizations. You get to see this play out. But talking to yourself instead of listening to yourself, that affects your mindset. And that creates a whole new perspective, and it creates your life and your world in a very positive way.
Dr. Jenelle Kim is a 9th-generation master herbologist, best-selling author, and internationally recognized wellness expert. In our conversation, she shared the power of living meditation, how to manage and master fear, and in this clip, the importance of pausing and not getting drunk on your own thoughts.
In any situation, if you react, it's based on emotion, right? I've trained myself this way. And emotion is so important. We're human beings. We have to have emotion. We have to have feelings. It's very important. There's a role. But if we let that run our lives, our life can become very chaotic. We can make a lot of decisions that later, because we didn't pause and we just reacted in that moment, a lot of times we regret that. A lot of times we might not even know that had we paused, we would have had a much better outcome. But to me, when I say that word respond, and I literally will do this, these are my tools and what I teach, of course, but I live in any situation. When you pause and feel that word, I'm going to respond to what's happening. That's the balance I'm speaking of. We start training our mind. I'm a doctor of traditional oriental medicine. I make formulations that are good for our skin and our body. But what I teach, part of those 3 M's, the movement, Qigong, moving meditation, and the mindset, the living meditation, they're all so incredibly important as well. And I don't want to keep going down this tangent, but it's just so very important to be able to utilize those tools to broaden our perspective, to learn how to balance, as I said. And then it basically opens up this whole other way of living where we can remain as calm, ready to handle whatever comes our way.
Michael Anthony, aka Michael Unbroken, suffered unimaginable trauma as a child, which almost destroyed him. But through courage and grit, he rose above it and built a powerful and impactful life. Now, he empowers people to love themselves, to choose discipline over instant gratification, and to tell the truth no matter what.
I don't think you can mitigate the rock bottom to create change. And the reason why I'm going to say this is now, dude, I have coached thousands of people over the years. Millions of people have listened to my show. I've interviewed the greatest minds in mental health: Dr. Gabor Mate, Dr. Caroline Leaf, Judd Brewer, Meryl Bouquet, Tom Bilyeu, David Meltzer. I mean, bro, I've interviewed we all agree. You got to get to the point in your life where you're tired of your own shit. And until that moment happens, you're not going to do anything about it. And as much, because the thing is, dude, here's what's really interesting. My thesis when I started my podcast is, if I can mitigate the rock bottom moment, people can change their life sooner.
Right.
It's literally the same thing that you're talking about. That's why I started the show, because I was like, man, I feel like if I could help people save the suffering of 5 panic attacks, getting dumped by your girlfriend you've been with forever, your brother's not talking to you, $50,000 in debt, being morbidly obese. If I can mitigate that risk through this show, that would be amazing. We're almost 800 episodes in, and I haven't figured out that solution.
Wow.
You know what I mean? And so my hope is that we continue to plant seeds like this, but ultimately, people have got to get to that moment of looking at their life where they refuse to continue to accept the reality, which leads me to the answer of your question. The very first thing that I did is I stopped being a liar. The hardest thing ever, dude. And here's the thing. What's interesting too, if you would have been like, hey, if you want to change your fucking life, stop lying. And then you told me the consequences of honesty, I don't know if I would have done it. I really don't. There was so much truth to be told, so much to honor, so much to lay out on the line, so many wrongs to right for myself, for my family, for the people, for everything that I touched. And what's really interesting about that is that you always hear the truth will set you free. It's honestly probably the most accurate statement ever created in the history of the world. I went from 5 panic attacks a day and hiding every secret you can possibly imagine to freedom.
Michael Chernow is another shining example of resilience. He overcame drug and alcohol addiction to become a thriving restaurant owner, fitness competitor, and prolific entrepreneur. And with his new Creatures of Habit platform, Michael's goal is to give people the power to change their lives by harnessing healthy habits from wake up to wind down. Here's more on how to build those habits.
The things that we do consistently define who we are, period, done. It's not who we want to be. It's not who we say we are. It's not who we think we are. It's the decisions we make on a consistent basis, day in and day out, define who we are and how the world sees us.
By the way,
Period.
that's super, super, super important. I think for all of humanity. You know, I always, because it's super. You know, and as far as the Common Denominator podcast, I try to talk about the things we have in common, and I think it if you break it down micro, it's literally the habits.
I couldn't agree more. You know, like, and by the way, habits are also things that we don't do, right? Like habits don't have to be only action. Habits can also be inaction. And so going to bed late, waking up late, grabbing a donut or grabbing a bowl of meal one, you know, not eating until 4 o'clock in the afternoon because nutrition is not a priority for you. And then all of a sudden you gorge on a meal and you feel like shit. And, you know, so like habit is really, you know, there's so many different ways to define what habit means, but ultimately what it boils down to for me is we are making decisions from the second we open our eyes till the second we go to bed and close our eyes and fall asleep. The whole entire day is based around decision. What are we going to do or not do? And I'd like to, you know, I think I've thrown my flag in the ground as a human being that really does believe in life is a day. It's all you get. Yesterday's gone. Tomorrow is not guaranteed. So our life is literally lived in a day. You get to put numbers on the board today. You cannot do it yesterday, and you certainly can't do it tomorrow, right now. So we have to live our lives like, you know, this is what we get. And if you can commit in the morning, which is when I like to make my commitment for my life every morning, you commit in the morning and you basically look at the decisions as they come your way. And ideally, you're making better decisions, also known as done consistently habit. And then those habits done after long periods of time simply become who you are in your lifestyle.
Peter Crone, aka the Mind Architect, is a thought leader in human potential and performance. He specializes in helping people overcome the constraints of their subconscious mind so they can ditch their limiting beliefs and break free from constraints. Here, we discuss his take about a very powerful topic, perhaps the most powerful of them all.
You know, I think a lot of people that I've spoken to, you know, we have all different types of fears. I'm curious, what's your perspective on death? Well, I see that as like the greatest fear. Where do you see that in your mind?
I think it is until you understand it. I actually love death, right? Because you have to look at, well, from what perspective are you looking at death? So you and I have been on here for whatever, 25 minutes or so. We physically, which is what most people equate to death, right? Like the you that you are familiar with is not going to be here anymore. Well, actually, as it relates to your physicality, if I was to die in front of you, my whole body is still going to sit here, right? It will decompose over time if no one comes to remove it. But the actual physicality that we become so identified with and attached to, like this meat suit, is always changing. Like, so in this 25 minutes we've been talking, we literally have lost millions of cells. Now, by virtue of cell replication, new cells are being born. So the death of the physicality is incessant. It never stops. And that's a good thing. Otherwise, you literally through stagnation, it's like a snake that doesn't shed its skin. So firstly, physiologically, we're in a constant state of life and death and birth. As it relates to our identities, that's where most people are really scared of death. Like you're talking about a religion, for example, or somebody could also worry about their status in a job or as an athlete. Like I've helped a lot of people who are pro athletes. They get all the accolades, all the money, all the fans. And then when they retire, they go into depression because they collapsed their worth with what they did, right? So that's a form of death. The ultimate fear of death is going back to what I was talking about, the ego, that separate entity is the one that doesn't want to die. But if you're committed to being an extraordinary human being, then like I was sort of pointing to in a relationship, you're always ideally growing, meaning to me, to be truly alive is to constantly die to the current iteration of yourself. That's the way I put it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're stagnant. And this is where people get old, is not because of the aging process. I mean, let's face it, longevity now is such a buzz topic, and it's a huge industry with biohacking and all the rest of it. So people are doing all sorts of things with their biology. But to me, in order to access true vitality, you have to free your mind. And the only way to free your mind is to die to the limitations of your identity that were born in your childhood through whatever circumstances you had to go through. So I love death. We're always dying.
Hope you enjoyed those mindset tips. And now you're ready to hit the ground running into 2025. If you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, we'd be grateful for a like, share, and subscribe. And if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, feel free to leave a rating and review. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you again soon.